Welcome to Audit the Audit, where we sort out the who and what and the right and wrong of police interactions. This episode covers de-escalation training, the Baker Act, and officer misconduct, and was curated by the Batosize channel. Be sure to check out the description below and give them the credit that they deserve. Let's dive right in and audit the interaction. On March 5th, 2019, Miami resident Dima Loving called 911 to report that she and her friend Adrienne Green were threatened by a man with a gun. The Miami-Dade Police Department dispatched several officers to the scene, including Officer Alejandro Giraldo. Officer Giraldo made contact with Miss Loving and Miss Green on a street corner near the location of the incident.
Alright, so which one of you called him
I did after he called
You
me.
did. So who lives there?
Me.
You live there, and that's your friend?
Yeah, I live
Okay.
next door,
Next
not
door,
there.
they live next door.
He called me a. He's been
First?
calling me a. We didn't say
You didn't say
nothing.
anything?
Walking on the. He was
Okay,
like,
no one second.
That's fine.
and
That's
then
fine.
and then we was like, I'm not gonna sit there and let you call me out of my name,
So he-
especially
so he
you've been
called you
doing it the
first.
past few days, and no, that's
Okay.
not cool. Like
How
he's
come
sitting
you-
here in his
how come
yard.
you haven't called the police fine?
Why am I gonna call the police for him calling me names? I'll just take my ass in the house. But he pulled out a freaking gun.
He pulled out a gun.
A
He pulled his gun
shotgun.
and pointed it at my face
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't.
and told me he was going to
I
shoot
didn't
me,
get a chance to
and
get
I
it
didn't even got nothing to do with it.
What color was the
He
shotgun?
calls you.
I just saw the black barrel. It was
Black barrel?
long.
Okay, hear me out.
It's long.
It's a shotgun.
Okay.
Okay, hear me out. So, he called you. You call him.
Called me. He called me up. He
And-
was like,
Okay, but what I'm trying to figure out is at which point you actually stay on scene just to go to battle with him.
Notice the accusational nature of the officer's questioning. It is clear that the officers already have a version of events in mind that they are attempting to verify and are not treating Miss Loving or Miss Green as if they are victims of a crime. Each department has their own policy in regards to victim response and how to properly interact with victimized members of the public. But in 1999, the International Association of Chiefs of Police teamed up with the Office for Victims of Crime, the Office of Justice Programs, and the Department of Justice to create an organizational strategy for enhancing the response to victims of crime, which law enforcement departments are encouraged to follow. The strategy details 7 guidelines for police officers to follow when interacting with victims of crime. Here is Director of the Fairfax County Victim Services Unit, Carol Ellis, discussing the element of victim safety.
One of the major critical needs that victims have is for a sense of safety. In the immediate aftermath of the crime, they need to know that they are safe from the perpetrator. They're vulnerable, they're confused, and in many instances they have been traumatized. So I consider, and many victims do consider as well, that safety is probably the first and primary critical need after a victimization.
The Miami-Dade officers failed to even treat Miss Loving and Miss Green as victims, much less secure their sense of safety.
We did
It
not stay on
happened
scene. We were
fast.
Give me one
walking down
second.
the street.
I'm asking her. Give me 1 second. Y'all screaming over here. Well, I'm trying to figure it out.
we're not. It's
Okay,
not.
hear me
We're
out.
not trying to scream. You know, we're
Okay.
like.
It doesn't matter.
I get it. You're
Yeah.
reacting, but
No.
He gets it. Why can't you get
No,
it?
No,
I don't
I
like
get
to
it, but
explain that.
We're
I don't
not
like the
trying
tone
to
of
scream at
voice.
you, like we're
Okay.
trying to explain.
So now.
Stop talking.
Okay, so now. So he calls you. You called him a. At which point, if you see him going back inside the house.
He didn't go in the house.
He had
He
that
had
shotgun
it
with
at
him
all
already.
times.
He already, I don't
Yeah,
know.
I
All
know.
I know is he bent down, picked it up, and told me he was going to shoot me in the head. That's what he told me.
Okay.
It happened.
He never
fast.
went in the house.
Never went in the
He
house.
never
He
went
turned
in the
his
house.
back.
You saw it right there.
So he- so
picked
he-
it up from the
Bent
floor.
down. He has a bunch of
He
trees.
and
All
went
we
like
know
that.
is he turned
around
and came
went
up like
that.
this.
Okay, give me a sec.
He was in the fence the whole time. We were right here. Like, is there cameras out here that can prove this? There's street cameras. There's
Okay, where are they?
I don't
He
know.
got cameras saying
He
he got
got
cameras.
cameras.
It's a camera right there. Y'all need to do something.
Oh yeah, you need to chill out.
I
Okay.
just asked if I could go down next door and
You need
call
to
my
chill out.
kids.
You need to chill out because
Excuse
now you're gonna
me.
be arrested.
Excuse me.
You're being disorderly right now.
I'm asking-
You
I'm talking to
are
her.
gonna be arrested.
I'm talking to this lady.
Okay, I'm gonna give you one more chance. If you don't calm down, I'm gonna bring you in.
I'm calm.
Patrol officers of the Miami-Dade Police Department undergo an intensive 40-hour training program developed by their in-house crisis intervention team to learn how to respond to the mentally ill in crisis. The curriculum includes role-playing, mediation skills, nonviolent intervention techniques, psychotropic medication, and symptom identification. An article published in the Journal of Police Crisis Negotiations highlights certain behaviors to avoid during de-escalation, citing, quote, intervening officers should try to not allow their feelings to interfere with their professionalism and should always focus on the behaviors of the individual in crisis. The officer should be courteous and use words and phrases such as please and thank you, and officers should never take the individual's words or actions personally and should always remember that he or she is in crisis. Officer Geraldo failed to employ any measure of de-escalation tactics and created an environment of hostility by threatening a citizen in crisis.
I'm calm. I just want to go talk to my kids. I have a very important phone call.
Okay.
I just asked if I could go next door and charge my phone. My daughter is sick. I don't have time for this.
Screaming again.
I'm freaking out.
Second time, okay? You are acting disorderly. You will be arrested, okay?
Got a gun
Get it
pointed at
right.
my face. My
Okay,
daughter's
we're gonna
sick.
help you
I
out.
need to-
Good. We're trying
We're
to
gonna help you
investigate.
out.
Listen, we're here to investigate. Just calm down.
You know what? She needs to be back corrected, if
Okay.
anything.
The Baker Act is a Florida law that enables families and loved ones to provide emergency mental health services and temporary detention for people who are impaired because of their mental illness and who are unable to determine their needs for treatment. The act is named after Maxine Baker, a former Miami State representative who sponsored the act in 1972. People who require the use of the Baker Act have often lost the power of self-control, and they are likely to inflict harm to themselves or others. Officer Geraldo is suggesting that Miss Loving should be hospitalized against her will because of the distress she is experiencing from having her life threatened, a gun pointed in her face, and not being allowed to return to her sick child. According to the Baker Act manual, law enforcement officers in the state of Florida do have the authority to involuntarily deliver a person to a receiving facility for a mental examination. However, the officer must execute a written report detailing the circumstances under which the person was taken into custody. It is highly unlikely that any medical professional would declare Miss Loving's mentally unfit for having an emotional reaction to her life being threatened.
Alright?
Why do I have to be corrected when my life was just threatened and my daughter's sick? I just want to go
Are you
next
gonna
door
continue
and charge
screaming?
my
Miss Green is thrown to the ground, taken into custody, and charged with disorderly conduct. Due to the graphic nature of the event, I have omitted the footage of the actual arrest, but it is available to watch in the full version of the incident, which is linked in the description below.
You know that was
Partner gave
not
her
right.
orders. I understand that she has to talk to her child, but it's a lawful order that my partner gave her, and she refused it multiple times. Therefore, she was put in custody for that, all right? I understand she is very upset because she can't talk to her child, but an investigation is going on, and she has to comply with my partner's orders. When she doesn't comply with his orders, that's what happens.
No, that's understandable, but
Look at the way you're talking. See what I'm saying?
What?
Respectful. I gave you that. Okay, now you gotta remember this, ma'am. Okay? We are conducting a crime. If you're telling me somebody pointed a gun at you, it is a crime. One.
The officers wait until after they have escalated the interaction to the point of an arrest to admit that a crime may have occurred. At no point did Officer Geraldo treat Miss Green or Miss Loving like victims of a crime, yet he had the audacity to say that he was only trying to investigate a crime and insinuate that his actions were in the best interest of the victims.
Second, if she is a victim, give us a second. Let me do my investigation. We'll take it, from here.
Understanding the emotional state of a victim is part of an investigation, and Miss Loving's emotional outburst is a failure to properly investigate. If the victim of a crime is acting disorderly, it is the duty of responding officers to act as the first line of mental affirmation and make a concerted effort to comfort that victim, not arrest them.
Third, how many times do I need to ask her? Calm yourself down. You are causing a scene. How many times?
It is not the amount of times that he needs to ask her, it is the manner in which he needs to ask her. If Officer Geraldo had asked Miss Loving to calm down in an understanding, reaffirming, and sociable way, then she may have been more inclined to trust his intentions. Instead, Officer Geraldo shouted commands at Miss Loving and threatened her with arrest if she didn't cooperate.
People are coming out. They're looking out. Is there any need for that?
No, everything did happen kind of fast. I don't know, but you were kind of in the wrong too as well, because you could have went about it a different way.
This statement is a testament to Officer Geraldo's lack of training, as it demonstrates that he never even considered whether a peaceful resolution to this interaction existed. In the officer's mind, he had the choice of either using his taser on Miss Loving or simply arresting her.
I give you that.
No, wrong answer.
You
But
gotta remember.
anyways, you could have went about it differently too as well, because like that was crazy. He was very understandable.
I'm understandable, but she's not understandable of him. She's telling her to calm down.
Yeah, he
She's
was
trying
telling her to
out.
calm down, but
But she
like
kept raising her
it
voice.
all happened so fast. Like
You gotta remember,
he
everything's
had
recorded.
he had a way with when he was doing it. I don't believe that, so I don't care. Scratch that. On to the next.
Okay? All right. So we'll finish up the investigation on that, all right?
She's gonna be out today.
Yeah, she will be out if she pays the bond.
The Miami-Dade police officers failed to bring charges against the man who brandished the shotgun until 2 days after Miss Loving's arrest went viral. Miss Loving went on to sue the department and managed to collect 50,000 signatures on a petition calling for Geraldo to be fired and arrested. After the video was released, Officer Geraldo was suspended without pay. The following month, Geraldo was arrested for official misconduct for lying on a police report and misdemeanor battery. Geraldo initially hired an attorney to fight the case, but was eventually appointed a public defender due to his inability to pay after months of not receiving a paycheck. Miss Loving's lawsuit is still ongoing, and Geraldo's criminal trial is set for October. Overall, Officer Geraldo gets an F for failing to treat Miss Green and Miss Loving as victims of a crime, threatening and provoking a crime victim in a state of crisis, and arresting Miss Loving for having an emotional response to her present situation. Officer Geraldo failed to fulfill his duty to the community in almost every way during this interaction. From the very start, he was confrontational, accusational, and inflammatory, and used his authority to suppress Miss Loving instead of aiding her. Officer Geraldo disregarded fundamental elements of de-escalation training and allowed Miss Loving's stress-induced mental instability to eclipse the actual crime that occurred. The only thing that Officer Geraldo managed to accomplish during this interaction was make Miss Loving into a victim of 2 criminals instead of 1. Miss Loving was in a state of distress, and it is difficult to assign an accurate grade to her reactionary response. It could be argued that if Miss Loving had remained calm, then the situation may not have escalated to an arrest, but it could equally be argued that Miss Loving's state of mind and Officer Geraldo's actions made that nearly impossible. One thing is for certain, Miss Loving was unjustly arrested and deserves compensation for the mental trauma she endured at the hands of Officer Geraldo. I give Miss Loving an A for following up this encounter with legal action and generating the social capital needed to have Officer Geraldo arrested. It is becoming increasingly more common for victims of police misconduct to receive a settlement, but holding police officers accountable for their actions is still an uphill battle. It is refreshing to see an interaction that results in both compensation for the victim and accountability for the officer. Let us know if there's an interaction or legal topic you would like us to cover in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more police interaction content.